on first down, wants to throw. Touchdown, Bulldogs! And that one will put them up here in the second half. The best way I can think of to describe this cat, he's like a human get-out-of-jail-free card. He'll make it work no matter the circumstance.
And so as a defense, Reese, I mean, you've got to be aware of what this guy is doing at all times. I mean,
Opening snap of this drive comes from the 38-yard line. They'll run play action. Under pressure, and down he goes at the 33. And the Dolphins themselves in
Yeah, if it is the case that you're saying that people in order to come to the country specifically should have to know civic test, well then you should be able to answer all of these things correctly. Because it is the case that the idea that someone should have to pass a civic test in order to get into the question is a ridiculous thing to ask for someone in the first place. It's not a result to restrict someone from coming to the country that would actually be meaningful. It's just a matter that you would weed people from coming to the country, weed out people from coming to the country because you have a specific set of people that you don't want from coming to the country that don't assimilate to the country in the way that you want them. And that's not what this country is about. This country isn't about, right, assimilating to everything.
Could I just say something really quick because you was talking? Yeah, so I don't know, Tyler.
This country isn't about assimilating to every aspect of how this country has been in the past or the norms of this country have existed.
I'm kind of...
It's about freedom. It's about liberty, right? It's about the pursuit of happiness, like you said already, which is independent of just living in accordance with certain types of norms, such as understanding those certain things. Someone can learn those things by living in the country, and that's totally fine, but they should not be obligated to know those things to be in the country.
Okay, so I repeated why you gave me the pop quiz. And then, did you hear my response to what you said?
The defense going to stop the clock.
Can you repeat that?
Did you hear anything I just said?
I did hear what you just said. I feel like I'm having to backtrack because I responded to certain things that perhaps maybe you muted me for, and maybe I was just speaking while
you were cutting me off, and I was finishing what I was saying. So I muted you.
Okay. I understand. I think it was a misunderstanding or miscommunication.
I was referencing, so if you want to have a productive dialogue, I was referencing freedom, right? The fact that this country is based upon freedom, the fact that this country is based on liberty and justice, right? Not specifically based upon, right, passing a fucking civics test. That's not what this country is based upon. That doesn't make the country safer. It doesn't give us more liberty. It doesn't give us more freedom. It doesn't do anything for us.
Got it. So I feel like we're going to have to backtrack just a little bit. So you gave me those questions about civics because you said that it is if I expect other people
to respond
to the country. I will. It's just, like I said before, I feel like I first have to make a point that I already made because maybe you're missing it. So, like I was saying, you gave me those questions because you were saying that if I expect other people to know those things, then I should know them myself. With the culture and with the civic values. So,
why you have to know that, but they just
Great, it's because those questions show that you have an effort towards making that cultural assimilation and understanding those civic values. If you're inside of the country, okay, that's really the crux of what you're asking now, which was what you just said recently. So, to answer that, I think, once again, to have a nation that is coherent, and to have a nation that is oriented towards what is good, that you should have, coherent, like I said, at least vague understanding of the things we value, such as no terroristic ideology. That was one of the things I said before. Such as, I would even say, for example, incredibly communist ideology wouldn't... Actually, no, I take that one back. You can be a communist and enter the country, that's fine. But I would say no terroristic ideology, or say norms that are at least, like, somewhat in line with the traditionally American norms. And I would say that would all benefit the nation because it would be a coherent nation oriented towards what is good.
Tight end now in motion.
So the only way to have a nation that is coherent and that is, targeted towards like the good of the nation is if we have a civics test. That's your argument. That's your justification.
No, not even civic test. A civic test just was there.
What's the point of the civics? How
I gave you the class civics test. I gave you the point.
You didn't. This was the argument.
It shows an interest in understanding the American culture.
Why do you need that? I asked you that question. You didn't answer.
I explained American culture. What I mean by that is norms, for example. So when I say coherent norms, I mean show an effort into understanding American culture, which means that if you take a civics test and you do well, you're showing me that you have an interest in American culture.
Why do you need that? I keep asking the same question. You're not answering.
Okay,
Why do you need
you
that?
asked? I did answer. You asked me.
Why?
Georgia ready to dial it up on another first down.
The good of the nation.
Okay, once again, so the nation has certain norms, correct?
Okay.
Yes. So would you say that would be bad to have, what's it called? Do you think it would be bad for the nation if we have multiple competing norms inside of the nation?
No.
So you don't think multiple competing norms inside of a nation are bad?
No, not necessarily.
Okay, fine, yes. So I disagree with that. That's our fundamental disagreement. I think if we have...
say necessarily if there's a competing norm that's bad.
If we have, like I said, it doesn't have to be exactly the same norms. It just has to be... It can't be a, let's say, inverted understanding of our norms. If you have that sort of... Okay, for example, an easy one that anyone can point to is if for example, were to be taken as okay in, let's say, I don't know, certain circumstances that wouldn't make any sense. Let's say that's not worship or some religious, that would be like, let's say, let's take a norm.
Like I'm on it.
Yeah, right. So let's say someone had a religious norm that competed with ours, and said murder was okay if the person was
No.
That would be a competing
Let's talk about any religious distinction. Let's say someone doesn't uphold the religious norms of our society, and they specifically are Jewish, right? Most people within our society are not Jewish, right? Is there something wrong with that?
No, because the Jewish person's what's called the norms are somewhat aligned in some way with
Wait, but that's called American norms. But being Christian, right, is not the same as being Jewish. Christian and Jewish,
it's not. It is not the same. It's okay to have different norms. It is okay to have...
Are those competing that are credible? They're competing.
They are, it's true.
Yeah, and there's also Catholicism and Protestantism. Are they competing?
Yes, they are competing in
those are things in society that are competing with each other, and you're totally okay with it.
Yeah, great. I already specified I think it would have to be competing to a very large degree.
So then it would only be in certain circumstances. Okay, so tell me why that's over here when we're referencing the civics test. Please tell me.
Great, so the civics test would just show me that if they have incredibly, that's why it's even very vague, is that let's say if they were to have, norms that were entirely just at odds with every single norm of the U.S., then they wouldn't do well on the civics test. Or if they were to do well on the civics test, it would show that they're coming to
You
learn.
can have completely similar norms to America, but not understand the certain questions on the test. That makes no sense. That does not follow at all.
I guess this is what I mean. When I have a civics test, I see an enthusiasm towards understanding American culture. You're right. They might understand it and do well in the civics test, but have
You don't need that as a U.S. citizen.
different norms.
If you don't need that as a U.S. citizen in order for the coherence of our society and culture, why do you need that as a fucking immigrant coming to the country? There's no reason at all for an immigrant to have to do that.
I'm confused what you didn't like there. I kind of already explained. We're backtracking now on the why the citizens don't have to take the civics test. I feel like I explained it twice.
And I've given a response to it. What was my response?
Your response was just why does having why does knowing a civics test and the civic values
If a U.S.
of America
citizen-
matter?
If a U.S. citizen doesn't have to know it, why does an immigrant have to?
Because a U.S. citizen probably knows the values of the U.S. and norms, which is kind of what the civics test shows interests of the immigrant trying to understand. They probably already understand it intuitively simply by being raised in the country.
Let's say they don't. Should they have to take a test?
What do you mean they don't?
Should they have to take a civics test?
Wait, they don't what?
Should they have to take a civics test to stay a U.S. citizen?
Stay a U.S. citizen if what? You said if they don't. I didn't know what. If they don't what?
I'm confused what you're confused about. I said, do they have to take a civics test in order to stay a citizen under your view?
In order for who to stay a citizen?
A U.S. citizen.
No, because they were raised in the country.
When I say stay a citizen, doesn't that imply that they were a U.S. citizen?
Maybe. That's not the point. Fine. Even if I made an error there, that's fine. My point is no, because they were raised there. That's the answer to your question.
So, again, just being raised there doesn't change anything about their impact on the culture. So if you're saying an immigrant has to have this norm sort of response to the culture, well, then that same thing must be true specifically of citizens. Otherwise, citizens would be harmful to the culture under your view and wouldn't be creating a society that's targeted towards the good or that is coherent. And because you were saying that this is relevant towards our society being targeted and geared towards the good and for our nation being coherent. And if it's not being upheld by U.S. citizens, that means U.S. citizens are harming those aspects, right? So then obviously then you would say that you would prefer immigrants who are undocumented, who have come to the country, who have those certain values, over U.S. citizens that do not have those values. Do you agree?
Yeah, so when it comes to the entitlements of a person born in a specific place to citizenship, that's one thing. But I'm not even talking about that. I'm not saying that they're saying that they need to take a civics test to show that they have good values. I just think a civics test is a good marker for immigrants specifically to show that they are interested in learning American culture. I'm not even so stuck on the civics test. My main point is, regardless, the goal is, do I believe in birthright citizenship? I believe in certain circumstances. I don't think that you should be entitled. I'm not really sure on it. I'm kind of agnostic. I'm learning more about it after all the current things that are going on.
You just said that they have citizenship and they should be questioned because they were born.
No, I said that it was different entitlements that a person has when they're born in a place.
Why?
I'm still trying to understand all the actual it's technical. I'm sure, like I said, I'm against comments.
Like you don't hold it up. Judy, thank you for the $10. Thank you so much. Cristiano, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. $15. Thank you so much. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Cristiano. I really appreciate it. Samantha, thank you so much for the $5. Bonnie, thank you so much for the $4.20. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh. Bonnie said that her mom is going to the hospital, so that said you get her cheer prayers towards her. Absolutely. I'm so sorry to hear that. Hope that she's okay. Hope that she recovers quickly. Isaiah, for the $10. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
So do you agree with my critiques on the mass amnesty?
From the gun, wants to pass.
I also want to argue that it could lead to harm/crime. Yes, but we would also designate Isaiah at a lower rate than U.S. citizens. But yeah, what was your point, sir?
I was saying, so you understand my critiques on the mass amnesty? I'm asking.
No. Because you have given me critiques of a process for allowing people into the country, not for amnesty.
Yeah, amnesty would... Amnesty is how it bypass this. It bypass the points that I'm trying to make.
Okay, so then if you gave them a process to do that, where they don't have to leave the country, wouldn't that take into account all your concerns? Because it would incentivize them to go through that process. If you don't allow people to stay in the country, then they're gonna stay in the country undocumented, right? And if we legal process, but in order to actually incentivize them to go through the legal process, you have to give them the process, the pathway to citizenship, without them leaving the country.
Yeah, if they gave the pathway to citizenship with all the criteria that I mentioned in the screening, then I'd be good for it. I just think that there's going to be plenty of those people that won't meet the criteria, and therefore won't be deported back to their origin countries.
Sure, you can say that, but then people, you're saying, should be given a pathway to citizenship, even in circumstances in which they're already undocumented in the country.
Yeah, I'm actually not against that if they follow all the criteria.
So then the distinction then becomes, alright, it's not about deportation, mass deportation it seems. You seem to be given a certain set of criteria for people to get in the country. Then I can just question each certain set of criteria and be like, why should you have to have this? Actually,
that's what we're doing.
Actually, since you have so many set of criteria on people coming to the country, I have a question. If someone was held simply liable of sexually abusing a woman, would you let them legally enter the country?
No.
No? Okay, so to clarify, do you think there should be harsher qualifications on becoming a citizen through the context of immigration or becoming president of the United States?
I think they should be different. But what do you mean by harsher?
Harsher. Do you think there should be more qualifications for becoming president or becoming an immigrant?
Yeah, well, if you're a criminal,
Second down, they'll go to the
then you should not be president.
bring in the heat.
Okay, well, Donald Trump's a convicted criminal, so he shouldn't be president, right?
Avoid the hits.
Yeah, I understand that's the case, but I also understand that it is a contested point.
Why? What do you mean he's a convicted criminal? According to the U.S. court system, if you're an American patriot and you believe in the U.S. court system, well, Donald Trump's been convicted of 34 felonies. He's a criminal.
Yeah, I also
We're so
understand
law and order. We're against all these criminals. We don't think that they should be allowed to be president of the United States. Well, then you shouldn't have supported Donald Trump.
Please don't misrepresent me.
I'm not
But also,
misrepresenting you at all. I just represented exactly what your view was. You can literally go back and watch this on YouTube later and see you
you
said.
can watch this. I never said anything about so-called criminals. That was what we both agreed on.
Oh, wait,
That shouldn't be allowed.
did you say that a criminal should not be allowed to be president? Did you say that?
Yeah, but I never said that.
Donald Trump-
What you just mimicked.
Is Donald
Never
Trump
said.
a criminal?
Why are you running away from what I just said?
Donald Trump a criminal.
And he goes out of
According to
bounds.
the court in New York, yes.
He was convicted of 34 felonies. He's a convicted criminal. If somebody's a convicted criminal, should they be allowed to be president?
I think it depends on the.
So he said if they're a criminal, not allowed to be president. But if they're a convicted criminal,
Now to see if these guys can get back in the game in the second quarter.
No, I think you're misrepresenting me again. I said depends on
I'm
the trial.
misrepresenting you. Dude, are you serious?
I just said. I said it depends on the instance of the trial.
So, would you typically say that they shouldn't be allowed to be president?
Typically, correct, yes.
Yeah, given that you don't know anything about the case, you would say that they shouldn't be allowed, right?
Yeah, but I have an opinion on it if you want to hear it.
Okay, sure. What piece of evidence do you dispute the case?
That's not the type of opinion I have. That's not the objection I have. In the case.
One piece of evidence in the case?
No.
Can't punch it in with a first down run, and the defense.
Do you want to hear my objection to it?
Yeah, let's hear your objection, buddy. It's in New York.
Okay, cool.
They're New York.
No.
From the wide
Okay.
receiver.
No. It's just that studies showing that the location in which the jury was taken was indeed very biased towards
First and 10
towards
from inside their own
what's it called?
5. You
The
gotta
left.
take care of
I
the
also
ball. Because the strawman said it was placed instead of me talking about the studies showing
There was
bias in that area.
study.
I can't name it because this happened a long time ago. But
He doesn't know the study. He's just like, there's some studies that say that. Secondly, you're saying, oh, there's just a lot of liberals in the area.
you want to have like a
That just
productive
means-
conversation? I never said this at all. I'm
Who
claiming.
selected the jury? Who selected the jury?
Now improvising.
Who selected the jury, but it doesn't matter.
Trump's lawyers helped select the jury.
He goes out of
I know they helped
bounds.
select the jury. I did know
Jury
that.
selection process.
A play that can give a drive
I'm aware. I was trying to mention anyways that it is impossible really to even have what's it called a fair jury in that situation.
He said there's no way. If there's any case against Donald Trump in the context of New York, I won't accept it. It can demonstrate anything. It can have video evidence. But if the jury was liberal, no way. By the way, you don't even know if the jury was liberal. You have no evidence indicating that Donald Trump's lawyers were a part of the jury decision-making process in terms of selection. They would have been able to weed out people that they considered to be likely to be incredibly liberal.
I understand that. I also am trying to make the point that it is impossible for any citizen to not have an opinion on any president, especially Donald Trump. I'm not saying that it is specific to Trump. I'm not.
It's impossible.
Wait, try to excuse Trump as
There's not a
president.
wait. So there's not a single person in America that does not have an opinion on the president of the United States.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying with President Trump, it is virtually impossible to figure out how to get a fair jury in the time span which
You
they
don't
did
think there
for
were people in
Donald Trump's trial. I'm in the middle of saying my point. That in the time span of Donald Trump's trial to get
So you think that there's literally not anyone in the context of New York that would meet the set of criteria of not knowing who Donald Trump is. And even if they do, they can set those biases aside. That's the point of the jury. Is they set those biases aside. There was 12 jurors that determined that Donald Trump was found guilty of this in a criminal court.
Makes the grab. It's off.
See, it's not about it being a criminal court, everyone. When people say they don't accept Donald Trump being held civil liable of sexual abuse moment because it's not in criminal court, they're lying. If it was in criminal court, they wouldn't accept it. They'd be making the same arguments. Same arguments. It's just great talking points. They get spewed to them, and they just buy it for no reason. This is a horrible reason to say that you don't accept the results of a court case.
You know the principal sufficient reason?
Yes.
Yeah, so basically, I'm saying it is sufficiently reasonable to say that if there's a trial with many indicating factors that point to injustice, that it wouldn't be a crazy proposal at all to say that the trial was unjust or at least different than a typical criminal trial. And that's all I'm saying. So I'm saying in this instance of the trial, it is
not accepted. By the way, that's not how the principles. I just want to clarify. But like, I actually don't know why you just referenced the PSR. That was crazy.
No, you're right.
That's how the PSR is used.
No, I actually do. I can explain it to you if you want. I can explain what the principle of sufficient reason is.
Go ahead.
So, the principle of sufficient reason is basically that a thing doesn't like pop into being. So it is sufficiently reasonable to make the claim that, for example, something caused the thing to be. That'd be an example of the. So it involves things like I can't remember the exact ideology, the exact terminology for it.
So you actually
things like
you're kind of close.
Persistence, could be continuity.
I just want to clarify.
That would kind of be what makes up the PSR. So you're right, it doesn't apply here.
You're kind of mistaken. Yeah, it doesn't apply at all. So given that definition that you just provided, it doesn't apply at all. It's about like things like, okay, if there's something that came into existence, there has to be a sufficient reason as to why they came into existence. It can't just be that they came into existence, which I could dispute that based upon that as well. Like, there's no reason why not. We did it. Sorry. Well, no, I'm not arguing the PSR. That's totally irrelevant to argue. And by the way, even if you establish the PSR to be accurate, that doesn't justify any actual specific religion. Right? Even if you accept the contingency argument, it still doesn't accept any other religion. I mean, there's plenty of things, but like, yeah, the PSR is vastly and widely disputed, even then. But the fact that you brought it up in that context is kind of really funny.
I know. No, I don't know where I'm not like,
to be totally honest with you, practically no one would be able to call you out on that. But just because I've debated a bunch of religious topics in the past, and because I'm associated with those types of arguments, because I've debated people who have run the contingency argument, I do know.
You're in the community, so you know.
Yeah. So like practically no one would have been able to call you on that. It's just because
most people on the app would just let it fly by. But yeah. Anyway, that's fine. It doesn't matter to the point that I'm making. My point is that the instance of this trial is different, and it is not and therefore my rule before of convicted criminals shouldn't be able to be presidents can be under influence because of this different instance of the trial.
I don't say. So are you saying that you don't accept any case against Donald Trump in New York?
What I'm saying is that it doesn't carry the same weight as a typical
But enough weight to accept it, right?
I'm saying not enough weight to discount him from being a president. No.
Wait, but you said if he's a criminal. Do you believe he's a criminal?
Do I believe that he did those crimes? Quite frankly, I'm unconvinced.
Jay, the $5 PSA lawyers can request change of the venue if a fair trial is impossible in jurisdiction. Yeah, I think they did, but it was denied. Saying that there was a fair trial.
What was that? Could you repeat that?
They did ask for like a change in the trial location, but it was not granted.
Okay, fine. That doesn't change what I'm saying.
No, which suggests that it is fair. So that is one thing. Like, the court system did address this, and you're saying that, like, oh, I just don't accept that court system. That sounds like incredibly pro-American. That sounds super pro-American court systems. You know, like, you definitely believe in the validity of court systems if you're willing to dispute a criminal court such as that. By the way, saying that Donald Trump is a convicted criminal, right, is not that wild of a take in comparison to everything else that Donald Trump's done. If you just had to say that Donald Trump was a convicted felon and all he did was literally just like was the business expenses, the falsification of business records, right? If that was just it, like, it's not like a crazy thing to accept. The reason why you can't accept it is because you don't want any criminals in the country. You think violating the crime is such a big harm to this country, and you have to justify that stance. And so it's kind of like a wildly absurd thing that you have to do.
No, I'm specifically talking about the qualifications for presidency, Yeah, obviously it's plausible that Trump committed a crime. It's plausible that many people committed a crime. What I'm trying to say isn't also that you should kick out every person that committed a crime. I was also just saying as a standard for immigration, you shouldn't have people who committed a crime, and you agreed with me on that. So I think the important thing to pay attention to, once again, is just when you make a trial for a president, any president, Trump or literally any president, how that trial is conducted should be treated very, very differently, especially in terms of timing. If, for example, the trial was even just delayed towards after presidency or towards a time where it wouldn't have as much political influence, the fact that there's so much political influence on it puts a pressure, an external pressure, on the results of this trial towards every citizen, because the relevance of the presidency goes on to every single citizen, including the judge, including the jury, including every single person involved in the process. So that's why I would think it's not fair, or at least in order for me to carry weight onto this trial, do it in a manner that is much more careful, in a manner that is much more thorough.
Okay. If Joe Biden was criminally convicted in Florida for 34 felonies, would you accept that?
I don't know, that's a strange hypothetical. I'd have to look into the instance of the trial like I'm talking about with Trump.
But like, wouldn't they be biased? Because it is the case that like he's a political candidate, right? He was running, and it was in a Republican area. You know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't accept that, right?
Yeah, if that was the case, I wouldn't accept that.
Oh, he wouldn't accept it. He wouldn't accept a criminal conviction in a Republican area. If the Republicans found Joe Biden to have committed crimes in their federal investigations, would you have accepted that?
Wait, what was the difference you just made in the two cases? I already answered this, I think. No, I wouldn't accept it if it was in the same, if the trial.
So if the federal government, right, led by Republicans, found out that Joe Biden committed a crime, you wouldn't have accepted that? Or should the hand up?
No. This is the third time I'm saying that. Not that I wouldn't have accepted it.
Okay, well, then I have a question.
I'm saying, wait, let me actually clarify what I'm saying. Not that I wouldn't accept it. What I'm saying is that it wouldn't carry enough weight for me to disqualify him as a president.
Yeah, so like you would totally be okay with him still being president.
Okay with him still being president if I think it's obvious. Obviously, if the conditions that it gave to Trump making his trial not have as much weight, obviously it would also make a similar, just inverted version of the trial with Biden also not carry that much weight. I think that's obvious.
Okay. If Donald Trump were criminally convicted in New York for sexual assault, would you still vote for him?
If he was convicted for sexual assault,
yeah, criminally convicted.
Criminally convicted? Yeah, once again, it would have to. Once again, we're talking about presidents this whole time, correct?
So would you still vote for him? If he was criminally convicted for sexually assaulting a child. If he was criminally convicted for sexually assaulting a child, would you still vote for him?
I just have a clarifying question. Are you saying again that the trial instances were the same as the other trial instances?
Yes. It's in New York.
Then it would also not carry the same amount of weight for the same reasons. Why would it be any different?
So then answer the question yes. Say it yes. I dare you.
Say yes what?
Yeah, would you still vote for Donald Trump if it was the case that he was criminally convicted of sexually assaulting a child in New York?
In the same instances as there, then it wouldn't be a reason for me to disqualify him as a candidate now. That's not
insane, bro. You don't realize how insane you look when you say that. You don't get it.
Actually not true.
You don't understand. He just doesn't realize. You said you would vote for Donald Trump if you were criminally convicted of sexually assaulting a child.
Who won the popular vote?
Jesus Christ, get out of my life, dude. Oh my God. That's so crazy. There's no way he actually believes that, dude. He's such a cult member. It's unbelievable. I just want to clarify. That's so crazy. That's so crazy. That shows that genuinely, in terms of the criminal courts, like, you shouldn't be saying like that's a crazy perspective. You know, they always say, "Oh, I would accept it if it was a criminal case." What's up, how old are you? Luis, thank you so much for the 45 DKK. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Alrighty, everyone's going to the next person. By the way, I think I have like another hour or so left on the live here before I have therapy. So I do have to get off then, and I'll probably get on a bit later. I don't know if I got my main account back. I don't have it back yet. So I don't know what's going on with that. Yo, what's up? How old are you? How old are you? Let's go to the next person. Only send a guest request if you do support Ultra. Hey everyone, I'd really recommend for the 3,000 people here on TikTok, go over to my YouTube channel, subscribe if you haven't already. I would really, 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 really appreciate that. I'm telling you. And for the time that I'll be gone, I'll make sure that I have a video posted, because I did post a video. I think I scheduled it for a little bit later. I'll schedule it for right when I get off, so if people want to go check out the video, you can watch it. Let me make sure to schedule it for that real quick. I have it scheduled for 3 p.m. We'll schedule it for 1. And then in the meantime, you can watch the video, or watch the YouTube video if you'd like to. James, thank you for the 5 Canadian. Thank you so much. If you want to support me, as always, again, Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, Linktree in the bio, as well as the description of the YouTube, as well as you can support me over YouTube Super Chat, everyone. I should be on live a little bit later as well, everyone. Hopefully, I can get my main account back by then. But I would really just make sure to go to my YouTube and turn on notifications. It's the best place to go to. Yo, what's up? How old are you?
You know, curbside. It was like for that one day.
Oh no, I didn't. I didn't know about that.
What's your YouTube? My YouTube is Parker Get a Job. It's Parker Get a Job. Yo, what's up? How old are you?
It's 14.
Hello? You're gonna do 2 lives today? Yes. It's because I forgot. I planned my live to do 9 a.m. today, and I forgot that I had therapy at 1. So. Yo, what's up? How old are you?
28.
Do you support Ultra?
Didn't come here to talk about that.
Okay.
I just want to know what's your beef with.
Yo, what's up? How old are you?
24.
Do you support Ultra?
Yes, sir.
What's your birth year?
2000.
Okay. And 24, what month?
July
What day?
20th.
Okay. So why do you support Ultra?
I think he cares about the working class people.
Name one policy that benefits working class people that he's passed.
You know, the policy the other day, what with the Medicare cuts, I think that was good just for our tax cuts.
To clarify, you said that it was good for the working class to cut them off their Medicaid.
Yes, because we get tax cuts.
The tax cuts went mainly to rich people. And if you actually look at the overall effect of the big beautiful bill, the bottom quintile net lost. Did you know that? The bottom quintile net loses money. So working people who need help, they are getting hurt by this policy. And it's going to rich people. It's literally Robin Hood for the rich. It takes money from the poor and it gives it to the rich.
Did you read that on CNN?
No. It's from the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office. Nonpartisan committee from the federal government. I bet you think it was CNN, but you read all the shit you read from Fox News.
Fox News, Truth Social, sometimes Rumble.
You're trolling, right?
Yeah. You can just kick me off.
Let's go on to the next person. Only send a guest request if you do support Donald Trump.
Hi, Parker.
How old are you?
I'm 21.
You support Donald Trump?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Why so?
Well, I've been you before, and I've looked at your stuff online, and I wanted to ask you how you feel about transracial.
Transracial? I don't know how that relates to this. I don't think that's legitimate.
Yeah, so Donald Trump supports a lot of policies and stuff
that's gender.
Well, are both social content.
So in terms of the way that gender is viewed specifically from the context of people's societal commitments towards certain social norms, whereas when we're referencing